The dust devil swirled across the empty prairie as Samuel Hawkins rode into Montrose, Colorado in the summer of 1882, searching for something he could not name until the moment he saw her beneath that cottonwood tree with 7 children gathered around her skirts like wildflowers. Samuel had been drifting for 3 years since the war between the states had finally loosened its grip on his soul, moving from ranch to ranch, town to town, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots or make connections that mattered. He was 26 years old and felt ancient, his hands calloused from rope and leather, his heart calloused from loss and loneliness. The only constant in his life was his horse, a dappled gray gelding named Scout, and the Colt revolver he wore on his hip more out of habit than necessity. Montrose was a small settlement nestled in the Uncompahgre Valley, surrounded by mesas and mountains that turned purple in the evening light. The town consisted of a main street with a general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, a church, and perhaps 24 houses scattered like dice across the valley floor. Samuel had heard they needed ranch hands at the double bar spread just north of town, and he figured he would work there through autumn before moving on again when winter came. He was riding past the church when he heard the laughter. Not the raucous laughter of the saloon or the forced gaiety of people pretending to be happy, but genuine, bubbling laughter that sounded like water over stones. Samuel pulled Scout to a halt and looked toward the sound. Under a massive cottonwood tree that must have been growing there since before white men came to this valley, a young woman sat on a wooden crate with children arranged in a semicircle before her. She held a book in her hands, but she was not reading from it. Instead, she was acting out something, her arms spread wide, her face animated with expression. The children watched her with rapt attention, and when she suddenly dropped to a crouch and made her voice deep and gruff, they shrieked with delight. Samuel found himself dismounting without conscious decision, tying Scout to the church's hitching post. He walked closer, staying at a respectful distance, but close enough to hear her voice. And the bear said, "Someone has been sitting in my chair." She made her voice rumble like thunder, and a little boy in the front row clutched his knees with excitement. Then she shifted, making her voice high and squeaky. And the little bear said, "Someone has been sitting in my chair and they broke it all to pieces." The children gasped in delighted horror. The woman smiled, and Samuel felt something shift in his chest, like a door opening in a room that had been locked for years. She was perhaps 23 or 24, with dark chestnut hair pulled back in a simple bun, though wisps of it escaped to frame her face. Her dress was plain calico, faded from washing, with a white apron tied around her waist. She wore no jewelry, no adornment, but there was something luminous about her, something that made the afternoon sunlight seem to gather around her like a blessing. When the story ended and the children applauded, she laughed and stood, brushing dust from her skirts. "Now then, who can tell me what lesson Goldilocks learned?" A girl of about 8 raised her hand. "That you should not go into someone's house without permission." "Exactly right, Mary. And why is that important?" "Because it is respectful," the girl said. "And respect is how we show love to other people, even strangers." The woman beamed at her. "Yes, respect, kindness, consideration. These are the foundations of love, children. Remember that always." Samuel stood there, hat in his hands, feeling like an intruder on something sacred. But the woman had noticed him now, her eyes meeting his across the 20 feet of dusty ground between them. She did not look alarmed or annoyed, just curious. "Children, that is all for today. Remember to help your families with evening chores, and I will see you tomorrow afternoon." She watched as the children scattered, running toward the various houses and farms around town. their voices calling goodbyes that echoed off the mountains. When they were gone, she walked toward Samuel, wiping her hands on her apron. Up close, he could see that her eyes were the color of sage after rain, gray-green and clear. She smiled at him and he felt his throat go dry. "Good afternoon. Are you new to Montrose?" Her voice was warm with a slight accent he could not quite place. "Yes, madam, just arrived. I am looking for work at the Double Bar Ranch." He twisted his hat in his hands, feeling suddenly awkward. "You will find it 5 miles north on the main road. They are good people." She tilted her head, studying him with an openness that was not forward but simply genuine. "I am Willow Richardson. I teach the children here." "Samuel Hawkins, madam. I did not mean to intrude on your lesson. I just heard the laughter and—" He trailed off, not knowing how to explain the pull he had felt. Laughter should be heard and shared. You were not intruding. She glanced back at the cottonwood tree, then at him again. "There is no proper schoolhouse here yet, so I teach wherever I can. Under the tree in good weather, in the church when it rains. You are a good teacher from what I saw. The children were hanging on every word." Willow's smile softened. "They are wonderful students, eager to learn, kind to each other. It is a joy to teach them." Samuel had known many people in his 26 years. He had known soldiers and gamblers, ranch hands and saloon girls, preachers and thieves. But he had never known anyone who spoke about joy the way this woman did, as if it were as real and tangible as the cottonwood tree or the mountains rising behind the town. "You said something about love," he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "About respect and kindness being foundations of love." Willow looked at him thoughtfully. "Yes, I believe that love is not just a feeling but a practice, something we do, not just something we feel." "I do not think I know how to do that," Samuel said quietly. "Love that way." The confession surprised him even as he made it. He had not planned to reveal anything about himself to this stranger, this woman whose name he had learned only moments ago. But there was something about her that made him want to speak truth, to shed the armor he had worn for so long. Willow did not laugh or look at him with pity. She simply nodded as if he had said something that made perfect sense. "Many people do not. We are not always taught well. Will you teach me?" The question escaped before he could consider its boldness. "Teach me how to love the way you do." Willow's eyes widened slightly, but not with offense. She looked at him for a long moment, and Samuel had the strange sense that she was seeing past his dusty clothes and trail-worn face, seeing something deeper. "That is not a small thing to ask," she said finally. "I know. I am sorry if I have spoken out of turn." "No," she shook her head. "I am not offended, I am just surprised. Most people do not ask such questions." "Most people probably already know the answer." Willow smiled at that, a small, sad smile. "I think you would be surprised how many do not. But they do not ask because they are afraid of the answer or afraid they cannot learn." "Are you afraid I cannot learn?" Samuel asked. "No," Willow said immediately. "Anyone can learn to love better. The question is whether they are willing to do the work." "I am willing." Willow studied him again, her gray-green eyes searching his face. Samuel met her gaze steadily, letting her see whatever she needed to see. Finally, she nodded. "Then come to the tree tomorrow afternoon after I have finished with the children. We will talk." Samuel felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for years. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," Willow said, but her smile took any sting from the words. "You may find it more difficult than you expect." Samuel rode north to the Double Bar Ranch and was hired on the spot. The foreman, a weathered man named Dutch who had more wrinkles than a dried apple, looked him over and nodded approvingly. "You have the look of someone who knows horses," Dutch said. "Been working with them since I was 10 years old." "Good." We have got 200 head of cattle and 40 horses. You will help with both, but primarily the horses. We break and train them here before selling them to the army and to ranchers farther east. Room and board included, $30 a month. Sound fair, more than fair. Dutch showed him to the bunkhouse, a long, low building that housed 8 other ranch hands. They were a mixed group, young and old, some taciturn and some friendly. Samuel exchanged greetings but did not seek conversation. He had learned long ago that ranch work was easier when you kept to yourself. But that night, lying on the narrow bunk with his saddle bags as a pillow, Samuel found himself thinking not about the work ahead but about Willow Richardson. He thought about the way she had moved when telling the story, uninhibited and alive. He thought about her words. Love is not just a feeling but a practice. Something we do, not just something we feel. Samuel had felt love before. He had loved his parents who had died of fever when he was 16. He had loved his younger sister, who had been taken by the same fever. He had loved his comrades during the war, the men who had fought beside him through hell and back. And he had loved a girl once, back in Missouri, but she had married someone else while he was away fighting. But he had never thought of love as something to be practiced, to be learned. It had always seemed like something that either happened or did not happen, like rain or sunshine, beyond his control. The next day passed in a blur of work. Samuel helped break a 3-year-old gelding, mended fence line, and moved cattle from one pasture to another. The work was hard and familiar, and his body fell into the rhythm of it easily. But his mind kept drifting to the afternoon, to the cottonwood tree, to Willow. When the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Samuel washed his face and hands at the pump, changed into a clean shirt, and rode back into town. He found Willow exactly where he had left her, under the cottonwood tree. The children were just dispersing, and she waved to them as they ran off. When she saw Samuel, she smiled. "You came. I said I would. Many people say things they do not mean." Samuel dismounted and tied Scout to a low branch. "I try not to be one of them." Willow gestured to the wooden crate she used as a seat. "Sit, please." Samuel sat, feeling large and awkward on the small crate. Willow settled onto the grass nearby, her skirts pooling around her. For a moment, they simply sat in companionable silence, listening to the evening sounds of the town settling down for the night. "Tell me about yourself, Samuel Hawkins," Willow said. "Where are you from?" "Missouri originally. But I have been moving around since the war ended." "The war?" Willow's voice was soft. "Which side?" "Union. I was 17 when I enlisted, 21 when it ended. That is very young to see such things." Samuel looked down at his hands, scarred and calloused. Everyone was young. That did not make it easier. "No, I imagine it did not." Willow paused. "Is that why you feel you do not know how to love? Because the war taught you other things instead?" Her directness should have bothered him, but it did not. It felt like relief, like lancing a wound to let the poison out. "Partly. But also because everyone I have ever loved has left or died or moved on without me. After a while, it seemed easier to not love at all." "Easier," Willow repeated. "But better." "No," Samuel admitted. "Not better, just emptier." Willow was quiet for a moment, her eyes on the mountains. "I grew up in Ohio," she said. "My father was a minister, my mother a teacher. They taught me that love is an action, a choice we make every day, not a feeling that comes and goes like the tide." "How did you end up in Colorado?" A shadow crossed Willow's face, brief but unmistakable. "My parents died 3 years ago within weeks of each other. Cholera. I had no other family, and the church offered me a position here, teaching the children of Montrose, so I came west." "I am sorry," Samuel said. "About your parents. Thank you. I miss them every day. But I like to think I honor them by continuing their work. My father taught love through scripture, my mother through education. I try to do both. Samuel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So when you talk about love being a practice, what does that mean exactly? Willow considered the question. It means that love is shown through our actions, through kindness, patience, generosity, forgiveness. It means choosing to see the best in people, even when it is hard. It means being present, really present with the people in our lives. That sounds difficult. It can be, but it is also the most rewarding thing in the world. Willow plucked a blade of grass and twirled it between her fingers. With the children, I practice love by listening to them, by making them feel seen and valued. By teaching them not just reading and arithmetic, but how to be good humans, how to treat each other with respect and compassion. Samuel thought about this. I can see that in the way they respond to you, they love you. Willow's smile was soft, and I love them. Each one with their different personalities and struggles and gifts. That is another thing about love, it multiplies rather than divides. The more you give, the more you have to give. I do not know if I believe that, Samuel said honestly. You do not have to believe it yet. Just be willing to try. Willow met his eyes. Why did you really ask me to teach you, Samuel? What are you hoping to find? Samuel was quiet for a long time, watching the light fade from the sky. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I am tired of being alone. Not just physically alone, but alone inside myself. I want to connect to something, to someone. I want to feel like my life means something beyond just surviving day to day. When I saw you with those children, when I heard you talk about love, I thought maybe you could show me how to find that. Willow's eyes were bright with unshed tears. That is the most honest thing anyone has said to me in a very long time. Is it enough for you to help me? Yes, Willow said. Yes, it is. Over the following weeks, Samuel fell into a pattern. He would work at the Double Bar Ranch from dawn until late afternoon, then ride into town to meet Willow under the cottonwood tree. Sometimes they would talk after she had finished teaching the children. Other times, she would invite him to stay and observe her lessons. Watching Willow teach was a revelation. She had an endless patience with the children, never raising her voice even when they were distracted or difficult. She made learning feel like play, turning arithmetic into games and history into stories. But more than that, she taught them how to treat each other. When two boys got into a scuffle over a slate, Willow did not scold or punish. Instead, she sat them down and asked them to explain how they felt and why. She helped them see each other's perspective, guided them toward apology and forgiveness. She taught them that conflict was not the enemy, but an opportunity to practice understanding and grace. That is what love does, she told Samuel later, when the children had gone home. It creates space for people to make mistakes and learn from them. It does not demand perfection, but it does ask for effort and honesty. Samuel tried to apply these lessons in his own life. At the ranch, when a new hand named Tommy accidentally let a gate swing open and 3 horses got loose, Samuel bit back his first impulse to curse and blame. Instead, he helped round up the horses, then showed Tommy how to properly secure the gate. I am sorry, Tommy said, his face red with embarrassment. He could not have been more than 19. I should have been more careful. We all make mistakes, Samuel said, echoing Willow's words. The important thing is to learn from them. Tommy looked at him with surprise and gratitude. Later, Dutch pulled Samuel aside. That was good what you did with the kid. Most men would have torn into him. It would not have made the situation better, Samuel said. Dutch studied him with shrewd eyes. You have changed since you came here, softer somehow, but not in a bad way. Samuel thought about that as he rode into town. Was he changing? He felt different, certainly. The hard shell he had built around himself was cracking, letting light in. It was uncomfortable sometimes, like exercising muscles that had atrophied from disuse. But it also felt right, like becoming someone he was meant to be all along. Willow noticed too. "You are learning," she told him one evening as they sat under the cottonwood tree, watching fireflies begin to blink in the gathering dusk. "How can you tell? The way you move through the world. You are more present, more engaged. You look people in the eye now, you smile more." She paused. "You are letting yourself be vulnerable, and that is the hardest lesson of all." Samuel realized she was right. He was smiling more, laughing more. He had started joining the other ranch hands for cards in the evening, something he would never have done before. He had helped Mrs. Chen at the general store carry supplies to her wagon when he saw her struggling. He had given a drifter his extra canteen when the man's had sprung a leak. Small things, perhaps, but they mattered. They were threads connecting him to the people around him, weaving him into the fabric of community rather than leaving him isolated and alone. As summer deepened into August, Samuel realized something else was happening too. He was falling in love with Willow. It was not a sudden revelation, but a gradual awakening. He found himself thinking about her constantly, looking forward to their afternoons together with an anticipation that made the workday feel endless. He noticed everything about her. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the way she hummed while tidying up her teaching supplies. But this love felt different from anything he had experienced before. It was not the desperate, grasping need he had felt for the girl in Missouri. It was something steadier, deeper. It was built on respect and admiration, on shared values and genuine connection. It was the kind of love Willow had been teaching him about, a love that was as much about giving as receiving. The question was whether she felt the same way. Samuel had seen other men in town look at Willow with interest. There was Frank Miller, who owned the general store, a widower in his 40s with 2 young children. There was the new banker, a well-dressed man from Denver named Albert Green. Even the circuit preacher, a handsome man in his 30s named Daniel Foster, seemed to pay Willow particular attention when he came through town. But Willow treated them all with the same kind friendliness she showed everyone, no more and no less. Samuel had no idea if she thought of him differently, if their time together meant as much to her as it did to him. One evening in late August, Samuel found the courage to broach the subject, though obliquely. "You ever think about the future?" he asked as they sat under the cottonwood tree, the evening air warm and sweet with the scent of wild roses. "About what you want from your life?" Willow was quiet for a moment, her fingers absently braiding blades of grass. "I think about it sometimes. I love teaching, and I cannot imagine doing anything else. But I suppose I wonder about companionship, about finding someone to share life with." Samuel's heart beat faster. What kind of someone? Someone kind. Someone who wants to grow and learn, who is not afraid to be challenged. Someone who sees love as I do, as something to be practiced and nurtured. She glanced at him, her eyes unreadable in the fading light. "Someone like you." The words hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. Samuel hardly dared breathe. "Willow, I need to tell you something." "Yes." "These past months, learning from you, spending time with you, it has changed me, changed everything. I came here empty, and you have filled me with hope and purpose and—" He paused, gathering his courage. "And love. I love you, Willow, not just what you have taught me, but who you are." Willow's eyes were wide, her lips parted in surprise. For a horrible moment, Samuel thought he had made a terrible mistake. But then she smiled, a smile so radiant it seemed to light up the dusk. "Oh, Samuel, I love you too. I think I have for weeks now, but I was afraid to say it. Afraid you might not feel the same way." Samuel stood and pulled her to her feet, taking her hands in his. They were small and work-roughened, strong and capable. How could I not feel the same way? You are the best person I have ever known. I am not perfect, Willow said. I have my own struggles, my own wounds. I know. And I want to help you carry them the way you have helped me carry mine. Willow's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. That is what love does, she whispered. It helps us carry what we cannot carry alone. Samuel pulled her closer, and she came willingly, resting her head against his chest. He could feel her heart beating, steady and strong. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other as the stars began to appear overhead, and the cottonwood tree rustled its approval in the evening breeze. Their courtship, once acknowledged, unfolded with a naturalness that felt inevitable. Samuel was in town every evening now, and the other ranch hands teased him good-naturedly about his devotion. He did not mind. He was proud to be courting Willow, proud to walk beside her through the town, to sit with her in church on Sundays, to help her prepare her lessons. Willow opened up to him about her own past, her own struggles. She told him about the loneliness of losing her parents, of coming to a strange place where she knew no one. She told him about her fears that she was not doing enough, that she was failing the children somehow. You could never fail them, Samuel told her. They adore you. But what if I am not teaching them the right things? What if I am missing something important? Samuel took her hands. You are teaching them the most important thing there is. You are teaching them how to be good, kind people. Everything else is secondary. Willow smiled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Thank you. I needed to hear that. It was in these moments of vulnerability that Samuel understood most deeply what Willow had been teaching him. Love was not about having all the answers or being strong all the time. It was about being present with each other in weakness and doubt, offering comfort and reassurance, being a steady presence in an uncertain world. September arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color to the aspens on the mountainsides. The children returned to their lessons with renewed energy after helping with the harvest, and Willow was busier than ever. One afternoon, Samuel arrived at the cottonwood tree to find Willow in conversation with a well-dressed couple he did not recognize. The man was in his 50s, with silver hair and a prosperous look. The woman was younger, perhaps 40, dressed in a traveling suit that must have cost more than Samuel made in 6 months. Willow saw Samuel and beckoned him over. Samuel, these are Mr. and Mrs. Harrison from Denver. They have come with an interesting proposal. Mr. Harrison extended his hand. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Hawkins. My wife and I have heard wonderful things about Miss Richardson's teaching. We are looking to establish a proper school in Denver, Mrs. Harrison added, with qualified teachers who understand that education is about more than just memorizing facts. We believe Miss Richardson would be perfect for the position. Samuel felt his stomach drop. He looked at Willow, trying to read her expression. It is a generous offer, Willow said carefully. They are proposing a salary of $75 a month, plus housing. More than double what you make here, Samuel said, his voice coming out flat. Yes, Willow looked troubled, but I have not given them an answer yet. I told them I needed time to think about it. Of course, Mr. Harrison said. This is a big decision. We are staying at the hotel for 2 days. Please, take that time to consider. After the Harrisons left, Samuel and Willow sat under the cottonwood tree in silence. The afternoon suddenly felt heavy, oppressive. You should take it, Samuel said finally, though the words felt like glass in his throat. What? It is an incredible opportunity. More money, a real school, a city with culture and resources. You could do so much more there than you can here. Willow stared at him. And what about us? What about us? Samuel looked away, unable to meet her eyes. I have a job here. My life is here. Your life could be in Denver. Doing what? I am a ranch hand, Willow. Denver does not need cowboys. You could find other work. You are smart and capable and hardworking. Samuel shook his head. I would be nothing there, a nobody. Here, at least I am good at what I do. I belong. You would belong there too if you were with me. Would I? Samuel stood, pacing away from her. Or would I just be the poor ranch hand who followed his schoolteacher sweetheart to the city? I would resent it eventually, and you would resent me for resenting it. Willow stood too, her face flushed with emotion. That is not fair, Samuel. You are deciding for both of us without even discussing it properly. I am trying to do what is best for you. What is best for me is being with the man I love. Willow's voice broke. How can you not see that? Samuel turned back to her, and the pain in her eyes nearly undid him. But fear was stronger than love in that moment. Fear that he would hold her back, that he would not be enough, that he would lose her eventually anyway. Take the job, Willow. It is too good to pass up. And if I say I will only take it if you come with me, then you are asking me to give up everything I have built here. I am asking you to build something new with me. Is that not what love does? Samuel had no answer for that. He stood there, caught between desire and fear, wanting her and wanting to protect himself from the inevitable hurt. I need to think, he said finally. This is all too much, too fast. Willow's face closed off, a door shutting. Of course. Take all the time you need. Samuel rode back to the ranch in turmoil. His mind churned with conflicting thoughts and emotions. Part of him wanted to race back to town, to tell Willow he would follow her anywhere. But another part, the part that had been wounded and hardened by loss, whispered that leaving would be a mistake, that he would lose himself in trying to be with her. That night he lay awake in the bunkhouse, staring at the ceiling. Around him the other ranch hands snored and shifted in their sleep. Samuel envied them their peace. The next morning, Dutch found him working on the corral fence. You look like hell, the foreman said bluntly. Did not sleep well. Woman trouble? Samuel glanced at him in surprise. Dutch shrugged. I may be old, but I am not blind. You have been courting the teacher. Everyone in the county knows it. So what is the trouble? Samuel found himself explaining the situation, the words spilling out of him. When he finished, Dutch was quiet for a moment. Let me ask you something, the old man said finally. What are you more afraid of, going with her and failing or staying here and losing her? I do not know. Yes, you do. You are afraid of both, but which fear is bigger? Samuel thought about it. He imagined staying in Montrose without Willow, continuing his work at the ranch, living the same life he had been living before she arrived. It would be safe, familiar, lonely. Then he imagined going to Denver with her. It would be uncertain, challenging. But he would wake up every morning next to the woman he loved. He would build a new life, learn new skills. He would have a partner in navigating the unknown. I am more afraid of losing her, Samuel admitted. Dutch nodded. Then you have your answer. Samuel rode into town immediately, not bothering to change his dusty work clothes. He found Willow at the church, helping Mrs. Brennan, the minister's wife, arrange flowers for Sunday's service. Willow, can we talk? Willow looked up, her expression guarded. Of course. They walked to the cottonwood tree, their tree, and stood in its shade. Samuel took her hands, holding them tightly. I was wrong yesterday. I was afraid, and I let that fear speak instead of my heart. Samuel, I do not want to pressure you into anything. You are not pressuring me. You are inviting me to share your life, and I was too much of a coward to say yes immediately. He took a breath. I love you, Willow, more than I am afraid, more than I am attached to this place or this job. If you go to Denver, I want to go with you. Willow's eyes filled with tears. Are you certain? I do not want you to regret it. I will not regret being with you. I might regret how I navigate the change, might struggle with it, but I will not regret the choice itself. He paused. That is what you have taught me. That love means choosing each other even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Willow laughed through her tears. You have learned well. I had a good teacher. She pulled him into a kiss, and Samuel felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. This was where he belonged, not in Montrose or Denver or anywhere else, but wherever Willow was. They found the Harrisons at the hotel and gave them the news together. Mrs. Harrison was delighted. Wonderful. And Mr. Hawkins, I am sure you will find work in Denver. There are opportunities for a man willing to work hard. I will find something, Samuel said, more confident than he felt. Over the next month, they prepared for the move. Willow gave notice to the church, though she promised to continue teaching the children until a replacement could be found. Samuel worked his last days at the Double Bar Ranch, and Dutch threw him a farewell party in the bunkhouse. You are a good man, Hawkins, Dutch said, shaking his hand. You came here lost, and you are leaving found. That is something to be proud of. The children took the news of Willow's departure hard. Several of them cried, and even the older boys looked distressed. Who will teach us? Mary asked, her voice small. The church is looking for a new teacher. Someone wonderful, I am sure. Willow knelt to hug the girl. But even when I am gone, I want you to remember what we have learned together. About kindness, respect, love. Those lessons will stay with you forever. On Willow's last day of teaching, the families of Montrose gathered under the cottonwood tree. They brought food and gifts, tokens of appreciation for the woman who had taught their children so well. There were hand-stitched handkerchiefs, jars of preserves, a beautiful quilt made by the women of the church. Samuel stood to the side, watching Willow say goodbye to each child, and felt his heart swell with love and pride. That evening, as they sat together under the cottonwood tree one last time, Willow leaned her head on Samuel's shoulder. I will miss this place, she said softly. Me too, but we are taking the important parts with us. What parts are those? Each other. The lessons we have learned. The love we have built. Willow smiled. Yes, those are the parts that matter. They left Montrose on a crisp October morning, their belongings packed into a rented wagon. The journey to Denver took 3 days, following the Gunnison River north before joining the main road. Samuel drove the wagon while Willow sat beside him, pointing out birds and wildflowers, telling him stories about the places they passed. Denver was overwhelming at first. After the quiet of Montrose, the city seemed impossibly large and loud. Buildings 3 and 4 stories tall lined streets crowded with wagons, horses, and people. There were shops selling goods Samuel had never seen, restaurants serving food from countries he could barely pronounce. The noise was constant, a cacophony of voices and wheels and construction. But Willow navigated it all with calm confidence, and Samuel tried to match her composure. The Harrisons had arranged for them to stay in a boarding house until they could find permanent lodging. It was a respectable establishment run by a widow named Mrs. O'Brien, who took one look at Samuel and Willow and declared they were too obviously in love to be anything but married soon. We are planning to wed, Willow said, blushing. Good. I run a proper house. No unmarried couples sharing rooms. Mrs. O'Brien winked. But I suppose I can look the other way during your courtship, provided you are discreet. The school where Willow would teach was a grand building made of red brick, with large windows and a proper bell tower. She would be teaching 25 students, ages 6 to 14, and would have access to books, maps, globes, and other supplies that had been only dreams in Montrose. Samuel, meanwhile, began looking for work. It was harder than he had expected. Most of the jobs available in Denver required skills he did not have: carpentry, clerking, factory work. He was offered a position in a stable, mucking stalls and caring for the horses of wealthy residents, but the pay was barely enough to cover his share of the boarding house rent. For the first time since making the decision to come to Denver, Samuel felt doubt creep in. What if he could not find decent work? What if he became a burden to Willow rather than a partner? Willow sensed his distress. One evening, after her first week of teaching, she found him sitting on the porch of the boarding house, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," she said, sitting beside him. Samuel told her about his struggles, his fears. Willow listened without interrupting, her hand warm in his. "You will find something," she said when he finished. "I know it feels discouraging now, but you are capable and smart. The right opportunity will come. What if it does not? What if I cannot support us? Then we will live modestly until it does." "Samuel, I did not ask you to come with me so you could support me financially. I asked you to come so we could build a life together. That means weathering difficulties together too." Her words reminded Samuel of everything she had taught him about love. It was not about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about being present, being committed, being willing to work through challenges. "You are right," he said. "I am sorry. I am letting fear take over again. Fear is natural, but do not let it paralyze you." Samuel squeezed her hand. "What would I do without you? Fortunately, you will never have to find out." The next day, Samuel's fortunes changed. He was walking past a livery stable, one of the largest in Denver, when he saw a sign. "Experienced horsemen needed, must be skilled in breaking and training." Samuel went inside and asked to speak to the owner. He was directed to a heavy-set man in his 50s named John Parker, who looked Samuel up and down with shrewd eyes. "You have experience breaking horses." 5 years at the Double Bar Ranch in Montrose. "Before that, I worked ranches in Missouri and Kansas." "Double Bar is a good outfit. Dutch is a friend of mine. You know him." "He was my foreman." Parker nodded slowly. "I will send Dutch a telegram, verify your story. If it checks out, the job is yours. $45 a month to start, more if you prove yourself." Samuel could hardly believe his luck. "Thank you, sir. You will not regret it." Dutch's reply came 2 days later, full of praise for Samuel's work and character. Parker hired him on the spot, and Samuel threw himself into the work with renewed energy. The livery stable serviced some of the wealthiest families in Denver, and they demanded horses that were not just broken but properly trained, responsive, and gentle. It was challenging work, but Samuel loved it. With both of them now earning steady income, Samuel and Willow began planning their wedding. They decided on a simple ceremony in late November at the church where Willow had been attending since arriving in Denver. Mrs. O'Brien insisted on hosting a small reception at the boarding house afterward. "You young people have become dear to me," she said, wiping away tears. "Let me do this for you." The wedding was everything Samuel could have wanted. Willow wore a dress of pale blue silk, simple but elegant, with her hair arranged in soft curls. Samuel wore a new suit, purchased with his first month's wages from the livery. The ceremony was attended by Mrs. O'Brien, the Harrisons, John Parker and his wife, and a few other friends they had made in Denver. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Willow with all the love and gratitude in his heart. She had not just taught him how to love. She had given him someone to love, a reason to practice all those lessons about kindness and patience and vulnerability. They moved into a small house on the outskirts of Denver, a 2-room cottage with a garden plot and a view of the mountains. It was not much, but it was theirs. They painted the walls, sewed curtains, built furniture. Every nail Samuel hammered, every meal Willow cooked, felt like an act of creation, building not just a house but a home. Their first winter in Denver was hard. Snow piled high in the streets, and the cold seeped through the walls of their cottage despite their best efforts to insulate it. But they kept each other warm, huddling together under quilts, telling stories and making plans for the future. Willow thrived in her teaching position. The students adored her, and the Harrisons praised her innovative methods. She started a program where older students helped teach younger ones, fostering a sense of community and responsibility. She organized a Christmas pageant that drew half the city, raising money for families in need. Samuel excelled at the livery too. His gentle but firm approach to training horses earned him a reputation, and soon wealthy clients were requesting him specifically. Parker gave him a raise and began sending him to ranches outside the city to evaluate horses for purchase. But more important than their professional successes was what they built together in their private life. They made their cottage a place of warmth and laughter. They hosted dinners for friends, taking turns cooking and telling stories. They took long walks on Sundays, exploring the city and the countryside around it. They read to each other in the evenings, sharing books and ideas, and they practiced love every single day. They practiced it in small ways, making coffee for each other in the morning, asking about each other's day, giving encouragement when work was hard. They practiced it in larger ways too, supporting each other's dreams, forgiving each other's mistakes, choosing kindness even in moments of frustration or disagreement. It was not always easy. They had arguments, of course. About money, about how to spend their limited free time, about whether to visit Samuel's relatives in Missouri or Willow's distant cousins in Ohio. But they had learned to argue with respect, to listen to each other's perspectives, to seek compromise rather than victory. One evening in early spring, as they sat on their small porch watching the sunset paint the mountains pink and gold, Willow said, "I think I am ready." Samuel looked at her. Ready for what? To start a family. Samuel felt a surge of joy mixed with terror. "Are you sure?" "I am. I love teaching other people's children, but I want to raise our own, to show them the kind of love we have built together." Samuel pulled her close. "I want that too, but I am afraid I will not be a good father." "Why would you think that? I never knew my father well. He was always working, always distant, and I have seen so much hardness in the world. What if I cannot balance that with the tenderness children need?" Willow turned to face him fully, her hands cupping his face. "Samuel, you have learned to balance those things already. You are strong and capable, but also gentle and kind. You will be a wonderful father." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have watched you practice love for over a year now, and you have become so good at it." Samuel felt tears prick his eyes. It still amazed him sometimes how this woman believed in him, how she saw the best version of himself even when he could not. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for teaching me, for loving me, for building this life with me. Thank you for being willing to learn, for taking the risk of loving me back." They kissed as the sun dipped below the mountains, and Samuel felt a peace settle over him that he had never known before. He was home, truly home, in a way that had nothing to do with place and everything to do with the person beside him. Willow became pregnant that summer. The pregnancy was difficult at first, with morning sickness that left her exhausted and pale. Samuel took over most of the household chores, cooking simple meals and doing laundry before and after his long days at the livery. Willow protested that she should be doing more, but Samuel reminded her of what she had taught him. "Love means helping carry what we cannot carry alone. Right now, you are carrying our child. Let me carry everything else." As the months passed and Willow's belly swelled, they prepared for the baby's arrival. Mrs. O'Brien and other women from the church threw Willow a party, showering them with tiny clothes and blankets and advice. Samuel built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. In late March of 1884, on a night when the first spring rain drummed on the roof, Willow went into labor. Samuel rode through the dark streets to fetch the midwife, then spent the next 14 hours pacing the parlor while Willow labored in their bedroom. He had faced charging cavalry during the war without flinching, but the sounds of his wife in pain nearly unmanned him. Finally, just as dawn broke, he heard a new sound, the lusty cry of a baby. The midwife opened the door, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Hawkins, a big, healthy boy." Samuel rushed into the bedroom. Willow lay propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle. When she saw Samuel, she smiled. "Come meet your son." Samuel approached slowly, almost reverently. Willow pulled back the blanket, revealing a red, wrinkled face topped with dark hair. The baby's eyes were squeezed shut, his tiny fists waving. "He is perfect," Samuel breathed. "He is ours," Willow said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Samuel knew. "Thomas, after my father, Thomas Hawkins." Willow's smile widened. "Thomas, I love it. Hello, Thomas. Welcome to the world." Fatherhood transformed Samuel in ways he had not expected. He had thought he knew what love was, had spent 2 years learning and practicing it with Willow. But the love he felt for his son was something entirely different, fierce and protective and all-consuming. He would wake at night when Thomas cried, walking the floor with the baby against his shoulder, humming tuneless songs. He would watch his son sleep, marveling at the perfection of his tiny fingers and toes. He would feel his heart clench with terror at the thought of anything harming this small, helpless being. Willow, watching him with their son, would smile. "You are a natural father." "I do not feel natural. I feel terrified." "That is what makes you good at it." The ones who are not afraid are the ones who do not understand the responsibility. As Thomas grew, Samuel taught him the things a father should teach a son: how to be gentle with animals, how to work with his hands, how to treat people with respect. But more than that, he taught by example, showing Thomas every day what it meant to love someone well. When Thomas was 2 years old, Willow became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1886, they welcomed a daughter. They named her Rose, after the wild roses that had bloomed near the cottonwood tree in Montrose where Samuel and Willow had fallen in love. Rose was different from Thomas, quieter but more observant. She would watch everything with serious gray-green eyes, so like her mother's. Samuel adored her, this small person who seemed to see right through to his soul. Life fell into a rhythm of work and family. Samuel continued at the livery, eventually becoming Parker's partner when the older man decided to semi-retire. Willow taught for a few more years before deciding to focus on raising their children full-time. They added rooms to their cottage as the family grew, turning it into a proper house. The years passed, marked by milestones both large and small. Thomas's first day of school, where Willow cried and Samuel pretended not to. Rose learning to read, sounding out words with fierce concentration. The family trips they took in summer, camping in the mountains, teaching the children to fish and identify wildflowers. Through it all, Samuel and Willow continued to practice love. They still had disagreements, still faced challenges. Money was tight sometimes, especially when the economy faltered in the early 90s. Samuel's work kept him away from home long hours. Willow struggled with the isolation of motherhood, missing her teaching. But they talked through every difficulty, supporting each other, compromising, choosing each other again and again. They made time for each other too, stealing moments alone when the children were asleep, going on walks just the two of them, maintaining the connection that had brought them together. One evening, when Thomas was 12 and Rose was 10, the family sat together after dinner. Thomas was reading a book about the explorers of the American West. Rose was drawing, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Willow was mending a shirt. Samuel was working on a bridle that needed repair. "Papa," Thomas said, looking up from his book, "how did you and Mama meet?" Samuel and Willow exchanged a smile. "Your mother taught me something important," Samuel said. "What did she teach you?" Rose asked, setting down her pencil. "She taught me how to love." Thomas wrinkled his nose. "But you already knew how to love. Everyone knows how to love. Do they?" Willow asked gently. "I think many people know about love, but not everyone knows how to practice it well." "What is the difference?" Rose asked. Samuel thought about how to explain it. "Knowing about love is like reading a book about horses. You understand the idea, but you cannot actually ride. Practicing love is like getting on the horse, learning by doing, even when it is hard or scary." "Was it scary to learn to love Mama?" Thomas asked. "Very scary, because I cared so much about getting it right." Willow reached over and squeezed his hand. "But you did get it right." "You are still getting it right every day." "We both are," Samuel said. "Love is not something you learn once and then you are done. It is something you keep practicing, keep working at for your whole life." Rose tilted her head. "Is that why you and Mama never fight mean?" "Because you are practicing. We do fight sometimes," Willow admitted, "but we try to fight fair, to listen to each other, to remember that we are on the same side." "I think I understand," Thomas said slowly. "Love is not just a feeling, it is what you do." Samuel felt pride surge through him. "Exactly. And that is the most important lesson your mother ever taught me." In 1895, when Samuel was 39 and Willow was 36, they decided to take a trip back to Montrose. They had not returned since leaving 11 years earlier, though they had kept in touch with a few people through letters. The town had grown, doubling in size with the arrival of the railroad. But much was still the same. The church stood where it always had. And the cottonwood tree, their tree, was still there, bigger and more gnarled but unmistakable. They stood under its branches, holding hands while Thomas and Rose explored the creek nearby. "Do you ever regret leaving?" Willow asked. Samuel considered the question. "No. I loved this place and it will always be special to me, but it was just a place. You are home." Willow leaned her head on his shoulder. "I feel the same way. Home is wherever we are together." They stayed in Montrose for a week, showing the children where they had met, where Samuel had worked, where Willow had taught. Some of Willow's former students, now young adults, came to visit, telling her how much her teaching had meant to them. One of them, Mary, now married with children of her own, hugged Willow tightly. "You changed my life," Mary said. "You taught me that I mattered, that I could be kind and strong at the same time. I try to teach my own children the same things." Willow wiped away tears. "That is the greatest gift you could give me, to know that those lessons continue." On their last evening in Montrose, Samuel and Willow sat under the cottonwood tree one more time, watching the sunset paint the mountains. "You remember the first time we sat here?" Willow asked. "I remember everything about that day, how nervous I was, how beautiful you looked, how you agreed to teach me something I thought I could never learn, and look at you now. You are one of the most loving people I know," Samuel laughed. "Only because I had the best teacher. No. Because you were willing to be taught, because you took those lessons and made them your own." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of their children's laughter. "Thank you," Samuel said quietly. "For what?" "For saying yes. For taking a chance on a dusty, lost cowboy who did not know what he was looking for until he found you." Willow turned to him, her eyes bright with emotion. "Thank you for asking to be taught, for being brave enough to admit you did not have all the answers, for being willing to grow and change. We have built a good life, have we not? The best life. Not because it was easy or perfect, but because we built it together, because we practiced love every single day. Samuel pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Here is to practicing for the rest of our lives. For the rest of our lives, Willow echoed. They returned to Denver and continued their life, watching their children grow into remarkable young people. Thomas became a veterinarian, combining his love of animals with his desire to help others. Rose became a teacher, following in her mother's footsteps, starting a small school for children whose families could not afford regular tuition. Samuel and Willow eventually sold the livery business and bought a small ranch outside Denver, where they raised horses and opened their home to anyone who needed a place to stay. Travelers, families down on their luck, young couples just starting out, they welcomed them all with the same warmth and generosity they had learned from each other. As they grew older, they watched their children marry and start families of their own. Thomas married a sweet woman named Caroline, and they had 4 children. Rose married a newspaperman named James, and they had 3. Samuel and Willow's house was always full of grandchildren, running through the fields, learning to ride horses, sitting at the big kitchen table for Sunday dinners. One evening in 1910, when Samuel was 54 and Willow was 51, they sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sunset. They had been married 26 years, together for 28. Samuel's hair was silver now, Willow's streaked with gray. Their hands were more wrinkled, their bodies slower, but the love between them was as strong as ever, deepened by decades of practice. "You know what I realized today," Willow said. "What is that?" "We have been practicing love together for longer than we lived without each other. This has been most of our lives." Samuel thought about that. It was true. The lonely, lost young man he had been before meeting Willow felt like a distant memory, someone from another lifetime. "I cannot even imagine who I would be if I had not met you," he said. "You would have been fine. You would have figured things out eventually. Maybe. But I would not have been happy, not truly happy the way I have been with you." Willow smiled. "I feel the same way. You have made every day brighter." One of their grandchildren, Thomas's youngest daughter, came running up to the porch. "Grandma, Grandpa, will you tell us a story?" Behind her, the other grandchildren gathered, ranging in age from 6 to 15. They loved their grandparents' stories, especially the story of how Samuel and Willow had met. "What story would you like to hear?" Samuel asked. "The love story," several of them chorused. Samuel and Willow laughed. They never tired of telling it, of remembering those early days under the cottonwood tree in Montrose. So Samuel told them about riding into town, dusty and lost. About seeing Willow teaching under the tree and being drawn to her light. About asking her to teach him how to love, and her saying yes. Willow added her perspective, talking about how scared she had been at first, how Samuel's honesty and vulnerability had touched her heart. How she had fallen in love with him slowly, watching him practice kindness and patience, seeing him become the man he was meant to be. The children listened with rapt attention, and when the story ended, the oldest granddaughter, Rose's daughter Emma, asked, "But how did you know you were in love? How did you know Grandpa was the one?" Willow looked at Samuel, her eyes soft. "I knew because he made me want to be better. Not because he criticized me, but because his commitment to growing inspired me to grow too, and because when I was with him, I felt like the best version of myself." "And I knew," Samuel added, "because your grandmother saw me, really saw me, including the broken parts I tried to hide, and she loved me anyway. She loved me not despite my flaws, but through them, helping me heal and become whole. That is what love does," Willow told the children. "It sees us as we are and loves us anyway, and it helps us become who we are meant to be." The children were quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then young Thomas, named after his grandfather, asked, "Will we all find love like that? If you are willing to practice it," Samuel said. "If you are willing to choose kindness over cruelty, patience over anger, generosity over selfishness. If you are willing to be vulnerable and honest, to apologize when you are wrong, to forgive when you are hurt." "It sounds hard," Emma said. "It can be," Willow acknowledged. "But it is also the most worthwhile thing you will ever do. Because love, real love, makes everything else in life better and more meaningful." As the years continued to pass, Samuel and Willow remained each other's greatest support and deepest love. They faced the challenges of aging together. Samuel's arthritis that made working with horses difficult, Willow's failing eyesight that eventually made reading nearly impossible. But they adapted, finding new ways to contribute and connect. Samuel taught young people how to work with horses, passing on decades of knowledge. Willow had Rose read to her, then would discuss the books with a sharpness that proved her mind was as keen as ever. They took walks every evening, moving more slowly but still hand in hand, still finding things to talk about and laugh over. In 1925, they celebrated their 41st wedding anniversary surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The house was bursting with life and noise and love. During the celebration, Thomas raised his glass. "To my parents, who taught me everything important I know about love, family, and what it means to be a good man. Thank you for showing us how to build a life worth living." Rose added her own toast. "To my mother and father, who proved that love is not just something that happens to you, but something you create every day through 1,000 small choices. You have been my greatest teachers." Samuel, at 69, stood slowly. Willow, at 66, stayed seated but held his hand. He looked around the room at the family they had built, the legacy they were leaving. "I want to tell you all something," Samuel said, his voice still strong despite his age. "When I was 26 years old, I was lost. I had survived the war, survived loss after loss, but I was not really living. I was just existing, moving through days without purpose or connection." He looked down at Willow. "And then I met this woman. This extraordinary woman who taught me that love is not something you fall into, but something you practice. Something you choose, day after day, through easy times and hard." His voice grew thick with emotion. "Everything good in my life, everything that matters, has come from that choice. From choosing to love Willow, and continuing to choose her every single day for 4 decades. If I have any wisdom to pass on, it is this: find someone who makes you want to be better. Someone who sees the best in you and helps you see it too. And then practice loving them every day for the rest of your life." There was not a dry eye in the room. Willow stood and wrapped her arms around Samuel, and he held her close, this woman who had changed everything, who had taught him how to live and love. That night, after everyone had gone home and they were alone in the quiet house, Samuel and Willow lay in bed together. "That was a beautiful speech," Willow said, her head on his shoulder. "I meant every word." "I know you did. That is what made it beautiful." They were quiet for a moment, comfortable in the silence they had shared for so many years. "Samuel," Willow said softly, "if you could go back and tell that 26-year-old man anything, what would it be?" Samuel thought about it. "I would tell him that the courage to be vulnerable, to admit he needs help, to ask for what he truly wants, that courage will be rewarded beyond his wildest dreams. I would tell him that the best decision he will ever make is to ride up to a woman teaching under a tree and ask her to teach him how to love." Willow kissed his cheek. "And if I could go back and tell that 24-year-old woman anything, I would tell her to say yes when that dusty cowboy asks to be taught, because he will be the greatest student, the truest partner, the deepest love she could ever imagine. "You think we have done well?" Samuel asked. "Do you think our life has mattered?" Samuel Hawkins. "Look at what we have built. Not just the family, though that is extraordinary, but look at the love we have put into the world. Our children and grandchildren are kind, compassionate people who treat others with respect and generosity. They are practicing what we taught them, and they are teaching it to their own children. That ripple will continue long after we are gone. Like you with the children in Montrose," Samuel said. "Your former student Mary told you she was teaching her children the same lessons. And they will teach their children, on and on. Exactly. Love multiplies, it grows and spreads. So yes, I think our life has mattered very much." Samuel pulled her closer. "Thank you, Willow, for everything, for teaching me, loving me, building this life with me. Thank you for being willing to learn, for having the courage to change, for being my partner in every sense of the word." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms the way they had for over 40 years. Samuel Hawkins lived to be 73 years old. He died peacefully in the spring of 1929, surrounded by family with Willow holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you. Thank you for teaching me how." Willow lived 5 more years, and she filled them with the same grace and purpose she had always shown. She continued to welcome people into her home, to offer wisdom and comfort to anyone who needed it. She spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about Samuel, making sure they knew what an extraordinary man he had been. She died in the summer of 1934 at the age of 75 in her sleep. On her bedside table was a pressed flower from the wild roses that had grown near the cottonwood tree in Montrose, a memento she had kept all these years. At her funeral, Rose read from a journal Willow had kept. In it she had written, "Love is not a mystery to be solved, but a practice to be mastered." Samuel understood this. When he asked me to teach him how to love, he was asking for the most important education any person can receive. And in teaching him, I learned too. I learned that love grows in the teaching and the learning, in the mutual effort to understand and be understood. I learned that 2 imperfect people can create something perfect together, not by being flawless, but by being committed. Samuel was my greatest student and my greatest teacher. Our life together was a testament to what becomes possible when we choose love, practice love, live love, every single day. That is the legacy I hope to leave. Not just children and grandchildren, but the understanding that love is both simple and profound. It is shown in 1,000 small acts of kindness, patience, generosity, and grace. It is built day by day, choice by choice, and it endures beyond death, living on in everyone we touched and everyone they touch in turn. The family buried Willow next to Samuel in a cemetery overlooking the mountains. On their shared headstone, Thomas and Rose had inscribed, "Samuel and Willow Hawkins, he asked her to teach him how to love." She said yes, and together they showed the world what love can be. Years later, one of their great-great-grandchildren, a young woman named Lily, visited their grave while researching her family history. She had heard the stories about Samuel and Willow, about their love and the lessons they had taught. Standing there, looking at the simple headstone and the mountains beyond, Lily thought about her own life. She was 24, the same age Willow had been when Samuel rode into Montrose. She had been wondering lately about love, about how to find it and keep it. And standing there, she understood. Love was not something to find like a lost object. It was something to practice, to build, to choose every day. It was shown through actions, through kindness and patience and the willingness to grow. Lily left the cemetery with a sense of purpose. She did not know yet who she would love or how, but she knew she wanted to love the way her great-great-grandparents had. With intention, with practice, with a commitment to being better today than she was yesterday. And in that way, the lessons Samuel and Willow had learned under a cottonwood tree in Montrose, Colorado in 1882 continued to ripple outward, touching lives they would never meet, changing the world in ways they could never have imagined. Because that is what love does. It multiplies. It endures. It transforms not just the people who practice it, but everyone they touch. Samuel and Willow had understood this, had lived it, had passed it on. And their legacy was not just a family, though that was extraordinary. It was a way of being in the world, a practice of love that would echo through generations, helping lost souls find their way. Just as Samuel had found his way all those years ago, when he saw a woman teaching children under a tree and had the courage to ask her to teach him how to love the way she did.